They say the earth remembers every curse, every insult, every drop of blood. He had everything, wealth, strength, and fame. But when pride made him laugh at the girls of the land, the ground didn't laugh back. Now the soil is cracking open and something ancient is crawling out. This is Afro Storybeat, where story rules all. Long ago, when the trees whispered secrets to the wind, and men still feared the spirit of rivers and stones, there lived a man whose strength was spoken of across 7 kingdoms. His name Adigon, son of the red earth. They called him the Earth Shepherd. He was not born rich. He was born during a famine beneath a shade of a dying Iroko tree. But the earth favored him. As a child, he dug canals that brought water to dry farmlands. As a youth, he raised walls higher than the tallest palm tree. By the time he was 30, he had more lands than any king and more gold than 10 markets could hold. Women sang his name, elders bowed when he entered the village square. Even the other Fin of Uyo sent him kola nuts during festivals. But the higher a man climbs, the more dangerous the wind becomes. One humid morning, under a sun that hung like a golden gird, Adigon stood before his newest project, a palace carved into the belly of a hill, built from red stone and obsidian. His men walked like ants, cutting through the soil and shaping stones with sacred tools. That was when they found it. "Master!" shouted one of the diggers. "There is something in the ground." They unearthed a stone, black, cracked, and steaming slightly. Though the air was cool, strange marks were etched upon it, like ancient warning written in flame. The oldest digger trembled. "That is Ukoto Oro, the forbidden stone. The ground does not give such things for men to keep. We must bury it." Adigon laughed. "It's just a rock." With a swing of his staff, he struck the stone, splitting it into two. That night, the wind howled like a wounded animal. Later that evening, as Adigon walked to his courtyard to oversee the arrival of timber, a woman approached. She was cloaked in rags, her face hidden beneath a net of beads and cowries. The guards would have driven her off, but she raised a hand, and they froze like statues. She stepped forward and whispered, "Adigon, son of the dust, the stone you broke is older than your lineage. Return it to the earth, bury what is not yours." Adigon, offended, narrowed his eyes. "You speak like a god, yet you dress like a beggar. Who are you?" "I am who remembers when men forget," she said. "You have struck a promise buried beneath blood, and the earth keeps all promises." Before he could reply, she vanished. The next day was the annual Igbeyewo festival, where the strongest men showcased their power and wealth. Adigon arrived in a robe stitched with lion teeth, gold rings circling his arms, and dancers chanting his praises. He donated 10 goats, 3 bulls, and 6 baskets of yam to the shrine of Ogun. The crowd roared, elders blessed him again. But one voice rose above the rest, a child, no older than 6, who screamed suddenly and pointed at Adigon. "He has blood on his hands. The earth is angry." Silence fell like a curtain. The child's mother covered his mouth and fled. Everyone laughed nervously and turned back to the drums, but Adigo's hands trembled. That night, as Adigo slept on his carved stone bed, he dreamt of a mountain with eyes weeping molten tears. A voice echoed around him. "You shaped the earth with pride, but you forget it shaped you first." He awoke, covered in sweat, and from the courtyard came a loud crack. A stone pillar had split in half. The next day, workers reported their tools bent when they touched the soil, and bears no longer perched on the trees around his mansion. But deep inside, something in him stirred a feeling he had not known since his childhood. It was fear. As week passed, Adigun's mansion was nearly complete. To celebrate, He invited kings, warriors, and traders from neighboring lands to a private feast. He served pepper ram, pan wine, aged for 20 years, and entertained with acrobats and fire dancers. As the guests toasted his legacy, a storm suddenly rose. Though the skies had been clear, wind tore the roof of the feasting hall. Extinguishing every flame, the ground shook beneath them. A voice came from beneath the floor. The earth has started to remember, and when it does not forgive. Everyone fled, everyone except Adigon. He stood in the center of the shaking hall, fists clenched. What is all this madness? He crowed. I am Adigon, earth shaper. No soil, no stone, no spirit can undo what I have built. But beneath his feet, the tiles began to crack. The earth answered in silence. That night the old woman returned, this time not in rags, but in a cloak of feathers and ash. She did not speak, she dropped something at his feet. A single black stone, whole again, unbroken. Adigon's eyes widened. She turned and vanished once more. And then he heard it, a heartbeat from below the ground, slow and thunderous, like something waking up. In the days that followed the feast, whispered swells like dry leaves around the village. The earth trembles beneath Adigo's feet, some said. His name is heavy, it's cracking stones, said others, but Adigon only smiled. To show his might, he announced the building of a new road that would stretch through the sacred grove of Iela, a forest older than any king, guarded by trees said to have the spirits of ancient midwives. When the elders protested, he mocked them in the village square. Should we worship leaves and bank, where my words can feed 10 kingdoms? He boomed. I will build my road and I will not ask permission from trees. That very night, thunder rolled with no lightning. He groaned like a throat glaring its fury, and the sacred tree began to lean as if listening. War began on the road, and soon Adigon's men were chopping down trees with iron axes. Birds fled the forest, the wind lost its smell. By the third day, one of the rivers that ran beside the grove reversed its flow. Fishermen panicked. The river grew darker, like the color of burnt clay. Children who drank from it fell sick. Women miscarried. A goat gave birth to a calf. The chief priest visited Adigu with a message. The spirits of Yela have spoken. Stop the road. Bury the axes. Kneel before the forest and pour libation. Adigu stared at the prince, then called his guard. Cut out his tongue, he said coldly. The priest was spared only because the guards refused to move. That evening, the wind returned, hot and sharp as blade edges. Dust whirled across the village in unnatural spirals, and something began to crawl from the broken roots of the trees. By the end of the week, cracks had begun appearing in Adigu's palace, thin at first, like spider webs, but growing daily. He summoned builders from all over the region. They poured mortar, reinforced stones, prayed over the foundations. Nothing worked. One afternoon, while inspecting the northern wall, Adigon knelt and touched the cracked soil. It was warm and it breathed. As he looked closer, a face formed in the dirt, feminine and ancient, with closed eyes. He staggered back, but when others came to look, it was gone. He said nothing, but that night, in his dream, the face appeared again, this time weeping. Two of Adigon's most loyal foemen died mysteriously the following week. One fell into a shallow trench and never hit the bottom. When the others peered in, the trench was gone. The Sandman was found buried inside a wall that had not yet been built. His bones were dry, his mouth open, filled with soil. The workers grew frightened. Several fled in the night. Others refused to step on the project site. Adigu, furious, announced he would finish the construction alone. He took off his royal robe and carried a stone on his shoulder to lay into the new road. As he placed it down, A whisper rose from the ground. You buried stones, but who buries your name? He dropped the stone and fell to one knee. For the first time in years, his hand shook. Soon the night grew unbearable. Whispers came through the walls, chanting without a mouth. The walls of his home sweated. The wind mourned words. Adigun, Adigun, it is remembering. He ordered the floor of his bedroom to be dug up. Beneath the tiles, they found a cavity, dry, dark, and pulsing like a wound. Inside the cavity was a black stone, whole again, and next to it, bones, human bones. He fell to the floor. Who? He whispered. His steward, trembling, said nothing. But Adigun knew it was the first laborer who had unearthed the stone, the one who cried, Master! On that fateful day. He had gone missing, and Adigun had never searched. The ground had kept him. As days passed, Adigun grew gaunt. He barely ate, he barely slept. His mansion was silent, yet never still. Shadows moved with their own rhythm. Then, one morning, a child stood at his gate, a girl with pale eyes and clay-crusted feet. No one saw her enter, no one knew her name. She looked up at Adigun and spoke calmly. The earth is older than your bones. It is remembering you. He bent down. Who are you? She answered. I am a memory. Then with the breeze she was gone. Adigun gathered the town elders and chief for a final meeting. He told them he would tear down the road, hold the palace, replant every tree he had removed. One chief, bold with wine, laughed. Even if you knew, Adigun, do you think the ground forgets? Adigun's eyes turned hollow. No, or maybe it can forgive. He turned to leave. That's when the earth beneath the palace groaned, a sound so deep, so low, it made their skin crawl. A hole opened slowly and deliberately in the center of his courtyard. It wasn't an earthquake, it was a mouth. That night, Adigun stood on the edge of the hole alone. He whispered to the wind, What do you want? The wind did not answer. The ground did. It whispered, Everything. The hole in Adigun's courtyard waited overnight. No workers, no guards, no sound, just a low, steady hum like the earth breathing. The villagers came to see, standing in silence. The bravest ones dropped stones into the abyss. They had no echo. Adigun stood at the edge, his face pale, his robe flapping in the wind like a broken flag. He hadn't slept in 3 nights. His eyes were sunken, his lips cracked. I built this palace with his hands, he whispered, but now the ground is eating it. He still tried to speak, but the wind snatched his words. Behind them, the palace cracked, walls wept moisture, statues crumbled. The others found his boot sticking halfway out of the soil, twitching. That evening, the village elders summoned a meeting in the sacred grove. The trees whispered angrily, leaves curling into fists. The oracle of the village arrived in silence, covered in white ash. The hole is not just a hole, he said, voice rough as grinding stones. It is a mouth, and it remembers. The mouth of what? The chief asked. The oracle turned to Adigun. You broke the pact of the earth. You unearthed a curse, shaped it with pride, mocked its warning. Now it seeks balance, and balance demands a price. Adigun bowed his head. What must I do? The oracle sighed. Return to the beginning, the day you became earth-shaper. You must walk back your steps and surrender your legacy. Adigun, accompanied by 3 torchbearers, returned to the spot where he had first discovered the black stone. The construction site was now deserted, the air thick with smell of iron and decay. Tools lay buried, trees bent inward as if bowing to a tomb. There, in the middle of the clearing, was a circle of bones. clean, polished, arranged like spokes of a wheel. In the center lay the stone, whole again and glowing faintly. He stepped inside the circle. Suddenly the wind died. The torchbearers were thrown back, the trees silenced. The soil rose up forming shapes, people he once knew, their faces cracked and blank. His old workers, the elders he mocked, the boy who screamed, the child with pale eyes. They all stared at him. You shaped us, they said in one voice. Now we shape you. Back in the village, tremors began shaking the town. Cracks appeared in roads, walls, and temples. Adigo's palace began to tilt, slowly sinking into the ground. Screams filled the air. Those who tried to flee found a road looped into themselves. Path led back to the hole. The wind blew inward. From the sky ashes fell, but there was no fire. The villagers turned to Ogun's shrine. The flame in the lamp extinguished on its own. The ghosts were silent. Then the place sank completely, vanishing without a sound, like it had never been there. Only the hole remained, widened, deeper, and hungry. Adegun collapsed, but his body did not hit the ground. He found himself floating in a dream of soil. All around him was walls of clay pulsed like lungs, roots twisted like veins. Faces grew out of the ground, hundreds, all watching him. The air was thick with memory. Then she appeared, the old woman, but this time taller, radiant, wrapped in a robe of lightning and dust. You were chosen, she said, but you chose pride. I wanted to make the land beautiful, Adigo stammered. You made it bleed, she replied. He dropped to his knees. What do I do? You must journey to the belly of the earth. You must face the trials of the four burdens, and if you pass, you may return what you took. The next morning, the villagers found a note carved in the rock beside the hole. It read, I go to the belly, let no one follow. No one saw him descend, but a witness, a blind hunter, claimed he heard footsteps walking down the spiral staircase. That wasn't there. The earth closed behind him. Adegun walked downwards for what felt like years. The tunnel twisted like a serpent, its wall warm, pulsing with the breath of the deep. His only light came from glowing veins of archery and gold running through the clay. At times he heard his name echo, not forward but behind him, like someone was repeating his steps. The path opened into a cavern, vast and echoing. Stalagmites shaped like old faces jolted from the floor. In the center stood four doors made of different materials. A door of blood, soaked wood, a door of mirrored bone, a door of breathing stone, and a door of ash and silence. A voice not heard but felt in the marrow spoke. To reclaim your name, walk through your burdens, one truth per door, one wound per lie, survive or remain buried forever. Adegun opened the first door and entered. He entered a room of red light. Rain poured from the ceiling, not water but something thicker. It was blood. And standing within were three men, his old workers, the ones who had vanished during construction. They turned slowly. You remember our names? One asked. Adegun lowered his eyes. I remember your sweat. No, you remember our use, said another. We built your dream, but you buried our screams beneath mortals. The floor turned into mud, thick with bones. A shadow rised behind them. The first foreman, his mouth sealed shut with iron. You let us die for walls, for pride. You walked past our graves without looking. I was building something greater. Greater than us, the foreman rasped. Then become what you buried, they charged. Adegun didn't fight. He fell to his knees, opened his arms. I am sorry. They stopped. The blood rain ceased. The room cracked, then collapsed into dust. He passed the trial. The next room was silent, cold, and gleamed with walls of mirror bone. His reflection stood before him, but it was not him. It was a version of Adegun, crowned, rolling fire, eyes full of storm. You dreamed of being a god, it said, and for a time you were. His reflection walked around him. You commanded soil, shaped the hills, crushed protests, fed orphans with one hand and whipped fathers with the other. I built, Adigu whispered. You took, the image replied. You became what the kings fear, but the earth does not fear kings. The earth only waits. The mirror shattered, slicing his skin. He bled. The pain was real. You were not judged by your rise, but by who bled during your climb. I see it now. Adigon gasped. Then walk forward, said the voice. Inside, the walls breathed, literally. Stones moved like lungs, then sighed. Here he found a woman in rags, now dressed in feathers and fog. You broke the sacred stone, she said. You shattered what was never yours. You never told me what it was. You never asked, she replied. The stone in the center of the room, whole again. A deep vibration made his teeth rattle. It is the heart of memory, she said, buried by the ancestors to seal away their grief. Your greed cracked it open. Adigon fell to his knees. How do I seal it again? She pointed to his chest. With what lies in you that is still true. He tore off his robe. Beneath, the necklace his mother gave him as a boy, a carved image of Ogun and iron still hung. I remember who I was before pride. The room smiled and opened. The final door opened into total blackness. There was no floor, no ceiling, only void. Adigun stepped forward and was swallowed. He fell for a lifetime, then landed. Before him stood a small hut, the house he was born in. Behind it, the graves of his parents. His mother stood at the door, as young as he remembered her, but her face was ash. But power fed your hunger instead, she said, and pride made you forget our pains. He wept. She opened her arms. Then remember it now, and carry it forever. He embraced her. The hut, the ashes, the silence melted away. Adigun stood again in the heart of the earth. All four doors were behind him. Before him now was the mouth, the true mouth, a yawning pit of stars and soil older than time. You have seen what you were, the earth said. Now what will you become? Adigun knelt. I will become nothing. The voice paused, then whispered. Then you were ready to become something new. A light shone from beneath the soil, golden and warm. The stone rose before him. He did not shatter it this time. He sank to the earth with it in his hand and buried it with a prayer. The earth did not open, it breathed, and Adigu rose again outside the hole beneath the real sky. In the ruins of his palace, the village was silent. The trees that had coiled withered uncoiled. Rivers reversed again. Crops sprouted from cracks. Adigun, now dressed in ash and clothes, went to the village square. He knelt. I no longer seek to lead, he said. I seek only to serve. No one cheered, no one jeered, but the earth was quiet, and that finally was peace. Children played on the land where his palace once stood. Trees grew again. The stone lay buried, but sometimes, when the wind blows just right, you can hear a whisper from the ground. Shape the earth gently, or it may one day shape you. Stories like these live on only when they are heard. Like this video, leave your voice in the comments, and subscribe so the next tale doesn't begin without you.